Hi knitters, we're ready to get started on the cast on of our cardigan that we're knitting together. Also, I think we need to address sizing issues. This is a question that comes up a lot, and people want their sweaters to fit, obviously. Our sweater is meant to fit as the designer wrote it. So the best thing that you can do is to go to the schematic page, which is in the back part of the pattern. There's measurements there. Now and read the notes, because they always write little notes about how the fit is supposed to be carried out. In this particular cardigan, the schematics that she has down are the actual finished garment measurements. They are not taking into account that there is a gap that runs down the middle of this cardigan. These sides were not meant to meet. They weren't meant to button. The fit that she was after was a gentle drape that comes down both sides of the front, which I'm game for because I think that elongates your body, and I think that design is very flattering on women. So that kind of came into play when I was trying to pick out a cardigan that I wanted to wear. Rarely would I button them down like that. That being said, the next thing you need to do is you need to take a good measurement of your bust. Come right along where your bra line sits, come right across the front loosely, because unless you want to pull it tight and that's how you want your sweater to fit, just do a nice measurement that lays right out on top of that. Write those down so you can have a record of those that you can refer to. In my case, I took a measurement and I was over 38. I took that number, looked at her numbers, and knowing that the cardigan is going to have this gap in the front, I decided to knit the size that's, I think it's 36.5 inches is what the size that I picked was. Because according to the way she has it written, that seems like that's going to probably fit me the best. Now, the beauty of the type of cardigan that we're doing, which is top down, that means we start here at the neck and we work all of the pieces together coming down. We will not have seams to sew up on this sweater, which I know makes a lot of you very happy. The other nice thing about this is you can actually try this on as you're working. So as you're working these increases that will be making your shoulder fit, you can actually lay this up on top of your body and you can see how it's coming along. And I can see that my raglan increases are getting down there, down there, down there, down there. And then when I get close to the point where I finish those increases that are called for, I can actually put it on, do a little squeeze under here, see how it's fitting. If I think it's a little snug, then I'll go a few more increases. Then I'll put it on and squeeze it under my arm and see how that feels. Now know that the blocking process is going to give you a little bit of relaxation there. So don't go for super relaxed in the first place, I guess is what I'm saying. Just go for a nice fit. Another thing about this that I really like is that there shouldn't be a whole lot of gap and extra material right here, which happens on some sweaters because the sleeve holes are ginormous. We're aiming for a garment that just grazes the edge of our body and fits nicely. So that's how you're going to be able, those are the things you need to think about when you're picking your size. Once you pick your size, then you can get casted on. So the first thing that we're going to do is we need to get a needle, the size that we gauged for, that works for with our yarn. Now, I know I've told some of you that I think you might be able to get by on a 24-inch cable. It is tight. There is a lot of stitches. By the time you're making all of this sweater all the way around, that's a lot crammed onto your needle. It's okay. They fit. I chose to use an interchangeable needle to knit this sweater so I can change my cables out. Started out on a 24. Went up to a 32, and then because I wanted to have the aspect of actually laying this onto my shoulder to see how it was fitting, I got a 40 cable and I stuck that on, and that allowed my stitches to lay out real nicely and not be all bunched together. And then I can actually take this and I can lay this over my shoulder and I can kind of see the progress that I'm making. Remember how I told you you could kind of flex that size thing just a little bit? I did. I thought when mine was coming together under the arms that I thought it seemed a little tight, and I knew that I wouldn't be comfortable wearing that. So I went ahead and knit 4 more increased rows. Now, make a note if you do that off to the side, because you won't remember those exact number that you did. I mean, things happen and you're going to forget numbers. So make a note of those you can refer back to, because later when we're working in the body of the pattern, we just need to remember that we made that just a few stitches bigger. So if there's any adjustments we need to make, we'll just flex them right there. You know, this reminds me of the way a seamstress would work a pattern. You know, they tailor it to their body. They make things tighter in one area and looser in one area. Well, we have a lot of freedom to do that ourselves. It's hard to make those choices. It's hard to jump out of the box and to take the risk of doing that. But there's nothing wrong with it. And if you go on Ravelry, you're going to see knitters who do this all day long. They're always tweaking and adjusting something. It's just how we put our little personal signature onto our finished piece. Okay, so the way that we're going to pick the size that we're going to cast on is on your pattern is going to be written a number. Then there's going to be a set of parentheses. Inside of that set of parentheses is 3 or 4 other numbers. Now I know which one was mine because I know what size I picked out. That's the one that I've highlighted down through my pattern so I can be sure and remember what size that I'm on in case I get a little brain fade, which happens. Then she is calling for a long tail cast on. Now, long tail cast on is beautiful. If you don't know how to do it, I'll try to do a little video, side note video that you can come back to and refer to many times, because you're only casting on once. You probably won't remember how to do it for your next project. It's great. The beauty of it is it's pretty flexible, puts a nice sturdy edge on it. Later we're going to be picking up stitches into these pieces right here, and the long tail gives us a nice edge to work into on that. The other thing is the long tail also, as we're casting on, it's almost like we're knitting the first row and laying that on too. So when you jump into your pattern, you're going to see that for your initial setup, well, your initial setup row, yes, happens in a purl stitch, because when you cast it on long tail, you got the first row already knitted on. So you're going to be starting your setup on a purl side row, which is the back side of your sweater. So flip it around, get into that orientation. My particular setup row, I've gone through and marked my numbers in it. Otherwise it can be very overwhelming. I'm going to read to you what my size says. You put your size in mentally. P2, PM. PM means place a marker. So put that in there because that's something that you need to be able to remember, that something's going to happen when you hit that marker on certain rows. For me, purl 10, place marker, purl 38, place marker, purl 10, place marker, purl 2. So at the end of this row, you'll have 4 markers in play. And then I've made this little diagram for you to show you where the dots are is where the markers are on your needles. This being the tips, you're going to have these markers hanging out at these places. Now, just to give you a little overview, this is the front part of the cardigan, this is the sleeve, this is the back, this is the sleeve, this is the other side of the front. So as you're knitting and you see those, you're going to be able to look down on that and see how that forms this particular shape right here. And you can see how the sleeves are forming. As you work this and you move down, your piece will resemble something that looks similar to this design. Pardon my little scratchings, but you know how I love to draw diagrams and do that kind of thing. Once you get your markers into place, then you're ready to take off and knit. We did that on a purl side row, so you're ready for that first knit row of increases. Now, these increases are specific one type of increase happens on one side of the marker, another type of increase happens on the other side of the marker, and literally it slants. So me moving my hands back and forth shows you how these two increases are going to cause a nice downward decorative stitch to happen in those raglan accents on this cardigan. I'm not going to address the make one left and the make one right in this particular video because you may have to watch it a few times, so I'm going to do a short clip that will be off to the side that you can watch for that and you can use as a reference later on other knitting projects. But I am going to read to you what the first row does say to do. Okay, we're ready for that first knit row. Knit to one stitch before the marker. So come right up, one stitch, marker sitting there, and you're ready for some action. Make one right. So at this point, before you hit that stitch before the marker, you're going to make one right. And I'll show you how to do that separately. You're going to knit one, SM, slip your marker, knit one. Then you're going to make one left on the other side. The right and the left make a nice mirrored increase coming down in this area. Then something, in case you're not used to reading patterns, I'll throw this in. Those of you who know, just skip over all this stuff. This video was meant to really help the person who's not really tackled this before feel confident in being able to decipher a pattern and tackle a project like a sweater. There is an asterisk written on those instructions that I just read to you. Anytime in a pattern when you see an asterisk like that, be sure and note and pay attention. To me it just says, pay attention, there's instructions coming right behind it, and there are. And in this case it says asterisk to asterisk 3 more times. So that means I need to repeat what was in that section 3 more times. Makes sense. We have 4 markers, and we know that we're going to be increasing in 4 places across this sweater. You know, patterns are like puzzles, and just finding the pieces and putting them together, it all makes it work out, and it makes you feel pretty accomplished in the end. Okay, your job now is to go ahead and to complete your knit row increases, turn around, purl back on the wrong side of your garment, with one exception. On the purl row, when you hit that one stitch before the marker, she has asked that you purl that stitch through the back loop. I will also follow up with an extra video on that. It's a little tricky. It's a very tight stitch, but what I think it's doing is it's drawing in any hole that may have occurred with our make one left and our make one right, which sometimes happens. And it's put a nice decorative stitch on it. Let me take this off and show you close up, if I can get this right, how nicely, and the light's not very good, there we go, how nicely that increase looks coming down through there. And I'm pretty pleased with it so far. So that's your job. You need to cast on, get your setup row, get your markers in with your setup row, take off with your increases. That happens every knit side row. Your purl side row, every purl side row. Remember to do something at the markers, purl through the back loop. Do this back and forth, working back and forth in a C shape until you reach the number designated on your pattern. And what it's going to say is that in between these markers that designate your sleeve, there's a set number they want you to work for. Same thing on the markers that designate your back section. There's a set number they want you to work for. So go get busy. I'll have the little videos up for you to be able to watch, and I'm going to meet you back in a little bit when we separate for the sleeves and we join under the arm and start the body. Happy knitting!